So, the healing journey is so unique for each and every one of us. And so, I'm excited to share a unique journey today with one of my friends, Cynthia. So, welcome, Cynthia.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
I would like to have you share a little bit about where you're at now with your healing journey and how you got there, because you've got a pretty profound but amazing story to share.
Yeah, where I'm at today, I feel like I finally figured out A, my purpose, um, and B, the reasoning behind why I went through everything I went through, which is such a profound way to end up. Like we understand it and we just move forward. Yeah.
And this happened to you during your pregnancy. So at a time when you're ecstatic about giving birth, bringing a new life into the world. And so share a little bit about what happened during that time.
Yeah. So I was pregnant with twins, which was a whole whirlwind for me. Not what I asked for or what I thought I asked for. We can touch on that, but then also not what I was expecting. And then my pregnancy was really difficult. I ended up struggling with what they call peripartum cardiomyopathy. It's a not a super common complication, but it's heart failure that's caused by the pregnancy. And
Wow.
so going through that, my medical team did not really listen to me. They kept telling me that I was fine and I knew something was wrong. And then at my 6 week postpartum checkup, my OB looked at me cold in the eyes and said, "We statistically treated you the way we were supposed to." And I was like, I think there's more to this. Like, I'm not a statistic. I'm
I am so
glad
filled
that,
with chills as you say this.
right? Like 65% of the women that have my heart condition end up in the morgue. And so, like, if you want to talk about statistics, like, that's not a fair statement. So that led me down this, like, going through, I went through, functional medicine and then herbal medicine. And then it led me to a Reiki practitioner. And it just became this beautiful path that led me to each modality that really answered more and more questions that I had in trying to understand why it happened. Scientifically, it's a genetic autoimmune response. Um, but energetically, why did that gene get turned on? And why did my body respond to it was more of my question, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think the interesting part is that you intuitively picked up on there's something going on. And that's the part that I feel medicine, and there are more medical facilities out there bringing in Reiki, bringing in energy and awareness of that sense. But listening to the mom, like we know our bodies. So, and that's
Yeah.
challenging too when you're trying to say that to the practitioners and they just don't get it. Right.
They don't. And so I really spent most of my pregnancy just knowing something was wrong. Um, and they kept telling me I was fine. They sent me off for one heart test. They did send me off for a heart test for the heart condition. However, they never did any follow up for the last several weeks of the pregnancy. And the heart condition specifically activates, if we want to call it activates in the last 3 months, up to 6 months postpartum is when they find it. And so for them to be so dismissive and then not do the blood test, it's one blood test that could have indicated that we were in crisis. Um, it was just really unnerving, and unnerving to be dismissed, I think, is the biggest thing.
So once they figured this out, Cynthia, what was the procedure? What did you have to do?
Yeah. From the medical side,
Hmm.
okay. So the whole story is that we got sent home 3 days post C-section. And by we, I mean baby A and I were home. Baby B was in NICU due to respiratory issues and feeding issues. And um, I was home for less than 24 hours before I really knew something was wrong. So I woke up that morning and had like a rattle in my chest. Mind you, I was a preeclamptic patient. I was 3 days post or 4 days post C-section, and my OB team told me to go to urgent care and not to bother the ER. This is,
Wow.
and I think if their team heard that this is what happened over the phone, they would be mortified. However, that's what happened. So I went to NICU. and saw my baby, because as I sat up, like the rattle went away and it felt better. Well, what was happening is I was carrying 20 pounds of fluid on my heart and lungs.
Wow.
So I went to the ER, and the ER doctor, I kept saying, just give me an albuterol. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Just give me, I need to go see my baby in NICU. Like, when you think about, like, that doesn't make sense, because you're not going to go to NICU if you're actually sick. However, he was like, nope, nope. And so they sent me to the cardiac unit. They pulled this one blood test. It's called the BNP, and that shows if there's cardiac enzymes. So it's not an indication that you're in heart failure, but it's an indication that there's something going on with the heart. And so I went in, and they put me on Lasix and a catheter, and I lost 10 pounds in 5 hours.
Wow.
And so after that, it became medication. It was just 2 different types of blood pressure medications. The way they explain it is that if you strain a muscle, like if you pull your hamstring, they're going to tell you to isolate it and not use it and let it heal. Well, you can't do that to the heart muscle. And so they try to relax the heart muscle as much as possible so it can heal, but it's still functioning somewhat. So your heart is supposed to push out anywhere from, like, normal is about 55 to 65% of your blood in each pump. And I was pushing out 20%, 20 to 25, which
Wow.
is outrageous. And now I'm back up to that 60% mark, which is fantastic. So I'm in recovery, but it's a crazy roller coaster.
That is, and I feel that I wanted you to really share about the medical part, because I feel there might be
Yeah.
some people out there that need to hear it. You
Yeah.
know, in case, or they may know someone. It's just, that, yeah, that sharing. So that way, in case someone needs to hear or finds this episode, and then you can
Yeah.
recognize what's going on. I mean, because I'm thinking back to like the days before we knew anything. And there were a lot of times women died during pregnancy or died after pregnancy. And these things happen. And so I'm so glad that you're okay. And I'm glad you're here. And so now let's parallel that with the energetic piece and what you've
Yeah.
discovered about, or have you discovered, if you want to share why
Yeah.
this happened, and what was the, the energetic or the spiritual reasoning behind it?
Yeah. Well, the whole, like, from an energetic standpoint, I always said I would never be a mom. And then I married my husband agreeing to have one. And apparently I wasn't very clear on that. So a Reiki practitioner was like, yeah, you really were sabotaging yourself, weren't you? However, when I went into I've done all the, like, emotional healing, releasing trapped emotions, Reiki work, um, ancestral work. But when I went into my quantum healing hypnosis session, that was one of my questions, like, really honestly, at the subconscious level, why did this happen? And the answer was, because I'm not listening. I'm not listening to source. I'm not listening to the messages I'm receiving. And the goal was never to push me past the brink, but they knew they needed to push me to that in order to wake up. And I look at my alternative healing, and I was like, oh yeah, that's when it all started. Like, it makes
Oh,
sense, of course. And I'm like, well, why did I have to be so stubborn to have to be faced with such, like, what messages was I missing before? That doesn't matter. But the what matters is that I got the message that time. And so that was, I think, a hard pill for me to swallow, to understand that, like, I wasn't listening, and I didn't realize I wasn't listening. And that was kind of the undertone that the subconscious told me. It was like, you've spent your entire life not listening, and it's time to start listening. And I was like, okay. And
so
what am I listening for?
right. And so I'm going to say, Cynthia, I mean, you're fairly young.
Yeah.
You don't have to say how young
Yeah.
you are, but you're fairly
Yeah.
young.
No,
And so,
I will. I'll share. I'm 34. Like,
yeah,
and I was pregnant at 26. So
right. So
yeah.
seriously, spirit was like, hello, Cynthia. It's, or I mean, I truly believe that we all contract for to have things happen to us, to wake up, to experience, to grow and learn while we're here. And so I believe that, your soul probably on the other side contracted that at this age, you're going to go through
Absolutely.
this. And another thing I want to share about, having 2 children. So I had 2 children, and then years later, I knew I didn't want any more children, but I kept having souls come around me that wanted to come through me. So in the sense of, these 2 beautiful girls that you have 2 girls, souls wanted to come through you. So they, somehow resonated with you and came through energetically.
Yeah.
So there's probably a bigger
Yeah.
picture of that too, right?
Oh, and like the picture keeps unfolding. Like it's a lot. Like, I've been told by multiple other practitioners that I was a twin in the womb, and that the twin really was just like self-sacrificed in order to make sure I made it. And then so in that session, I asked, like, what is that? And it's that, like, I came into a pretty turbulent womb, a pretty turbulent home. And the soul mission was never to make it earthside. The soul mission was to heal me and to continue to help me heal so I could make it earthside. Which brings me to a whole nother, like, there's theory. I mean, we can theorize on it all, but there's theory that one of the girls is that soul. And like, that's it's a big, interesting thing to navigate as a mom, to be like, what is my goal? What am I supposed, like, right now I'm questioning, what am I supposed to be doing for you now? Like, you helped me, or are you still here to continue to help me? And do I want that as a mom? I mean, it's what I signed up for, but it's like comprehending that on a human level is kind of difficult sometimes.
Absolutely. But I'll tell you, because I know spiritually several people that are around me or I've known of family wise, I've known people that say that, yes, souls that happened here, they came back in. Sometimes they were maybe their grandfather, they came back in as their son. I know someone who had child died in an accident, and the new baby is the boy. So it happens a lot. And
It
I guess
does.
it does, Cynthia. I mean, people have no idea, right? But I guess that what comes to me about, the souls you're working with is that, y'all are playing it out together. So it's not necessarily, like, okay, well, what exactly do I have to, to do for you? It's like, you're doing it, Cynthia. You brought her
Yeah.
in, the soul, and, you got how many years of raising and, putting all your wisdom and supporting that child and moving forward. So that seems to me like, your gangbusters already doing it, girl. So without knowing the
Right.
words, right?
Right. I think I intuitively understand that. I think it's I think that's the disconnect that a lot of us have, is like, we understand it on a spiritual level, but sometimes we so badly want to put this 3D spin on it when it's like a 5D world. Like, it's hard. It's hard to take out the other dimensions and still be able to explain it.
Absolutely. And I think that's why the spiritual part, that unseen part of us, is so challenging for especially those that don't really understand it, because a lot of it is kind of like not understandable, right? I mean, it's like things that happen that we're like, what the? I mean, magical things, and like this whole experience, and and another, the soul coming back in, but for myself, I feel it's just well, it's an exploration, right? Don't you feel that way too? I
Right.
mean, like, hello, every day is
Yeah.
an exploration.
Yes. I think that's how I feel now, that now that I'm beginning to understand the spirit side of things a little bit more outside of the one lens that I was provided as a kid.
Mhm.
It's helping me understand things so much more, that there's so much more that we don't, like, we're never going to understand it on a mind
I don't,
level.
yeah. I don't think until we get back to the other side, and then we go, oh, dang, that's what it was all about. Okay, well, let
Yes.
me go back again and do again, right, Cynthia?
Let's try again. Maybe I'll remember. Nope, you won't. You won't.
I know, not when you get back initially. But who knows? Because these young kids that are coming through, they're really awake. I mean, are
They
you
are.
finding your daughters are too? Because how old are they now?
Yeah. They're 7.
Okay, so that's still
Yeah.
young.
Yeah. I think they, like, just watching them intuitively understand what to do for themselves. It's the best example is this one. She really struggles with, like, getting overwhelmed. And recently she's been literally sitting, going into the Om position and going, Om. I'm like, where did you learn that? Because it's not
Oh,
something we do. And I'm okay with it. I'm like, again, like, did you bring that with you, or did you download that, or did you see it somewhere? I mean, because it's possible they catch things, but I'm like, it's fantastic because it calms her. However, it totally changes. Like, I'm like, oh, interesting. Interesting.
I love that so much. Yeah, when my girls were young, they too had all kinds of experiences, and then of course as they got older they kind of closed up because as many of us do, right? Like you just have
Yeah.
to kind of start to integrate into the world. But I think these days though the world is much more open and much more explorative in that field, even though, there's still a lot of gray area, right? So
Yeah.
let's now move into Synthia. QHHT, which is Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, which is something that was developed by the beautiful soul who was named Dolores Cannon when she was here during her
Yeah.
lifetime. And so I'd like you to share a little bit about your exploration through QHHT. And then I'll share mine because I've had some too.
Yes. I love it. Because that's what I was like, let's do this together because I want to hear yours if you're willing to share.
Yeah.
Mine was profound. So I went through this spiritual awakening probably 2020, 2021. I grew up in a Christian home.
Mhm.
And I went through a spiritual awakening during 2020 and I was like, wait a minute. I don't know if I can subscribe to the church. Not necessarily all of the information that's provided within their doctrine, but like or their scripture, I just don't know if I can subscribe to the rules and the structure of the church anymore. And then that was a whole process for me, right? It's abandoning an identity. It's a lot. And I'm married to a husband that has been a self-proclaimed agnostic or atheist the entire time we've been married. So then I was like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't want to talk about it because I'm still navigating it. Okay, so back to my QHHT. I went into my past life regression and I came back and I was like looking over these villages and I was a queen. I had a book in my hand. She asked me what was in the book and I wouldn't tell her. And I told her there was an army behind me. And then I turned around and I was like, they're not an army. They're like teachers. And so I turned around and I looked at them and we went back to my castle or my house or wherever we lived. And I finally told her what was in the book. And I said, it's the messages from God. I write the messages from God. And it was the messages before the Bible. And humans destroyed my words. So I kind of had to, like, when I came out to my human experience, I had to like process that because like I've abandoned this theory of God. Like I haven't used it for 4 years. I've used universe or spirit or anyway, and I used God and I was like, oh, what? Okay, now what? Um, it's fine. Then when I was going through that, we weren't a punitive community. And this is something I struggle with in humanity today, is we weren't a punitive community, but and we had these two people in one village that were causing mayhem. And I could see it, and I didn't know how to remove them and save the masses without causing punitive damage or punitive punish. Like I didn't want to punish them. And so I struggled with that as a ruler and trying to understand how do we save everybody without being judgmental and punishment and exclusionary. Like that is, and I look at today and that is something I struggle with. Like the world we live in is so turbulent. You're either left or you're right. You're this or you're that. And we can't find commonalities to just love each other. And that's something I still struggle with. So then we get to the subconscious, and I had questions about the heart failure. We talked about that. I've had migraines since I was 5. I was diagnosed at the age of 6 by the University of Iowa with chronic migraines.
Wow.
And when I went to my session, I was having 4 to 8 migraines a month. And we're talking like full blown migraine, not just a headache, like full blown, the nausea, the everything. I was like, I've tried everything. Like we have tried everything to get them to not happen. What is happening? Well, this was the most beautiful thing. It's related to a bike accident I had at 5. I flew off of a retaining wall with no helmet and hit my head. And so we had this beautiful visual experience where I was pulling weeds out of this part of my like occiput and it was like this massive garden bed, but it was so full of weeds that like it looked like I was just grabbing handfuls of grass. And I pulled them, and then I planted seeds of love, and I haven't had a migraine since.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, that alone was like enough for me to be like, okay, I'm in. Like, I'm in. I'm in. I'm in. I'm in.
I
I don't.
mean,
Yes.
wow. It's funny because I heard so many people talk about, the QHHT and how they have had profound healings. I didn't, and I'll share mine a little bit, but let's go back a little bit, Synthia, to what exactly, can you describe what QHHT is in your
Yeah.
verbiage, a little bit about it. And then,
Yeah.
you
So,
shared obviously about what happened during your session, but
yeah. Yeah. I skipped over the what it is. So it's a hypnosis technique that you go through a past life regression. So you get to see a past life. The purpose of that is that it's typically there's some undertone of answering a question. So when you see this past life, it's something you've experienced before or you've felt before. And so we're trying to find what that is to give you answers. And then after you experience your past life, we go into the subconscious, which is essentially the universal consciousness, right? Like in a quantum field, like we're all connected. We're all part of source. We're all part of spirit. And so it brings you up. I explain this to my clients. It's like the raw, true soul, without the conditioning of this world. And so we can answer questions from a soul perspective without having the filter and the conditionings of what you've experienced in this lifetime.
great
Yeah.
explanation. I love it so much. So, okay, so you had your obviously amazing experience. You're like, I'm all in. And then you went and got training. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So I went through that training and it kind of just took off really fast from there.
How was the training? Because I've done a lot of training in different like craniosacral and Reiki and different things. And I find going through those processes, well, it's transformative for like us, right? Because we're going through it in order to then provide it for other people. So how was that training for you? Because this is a big deal. QHHTs, it's
Yeah, it's
intense
a
and
big deal.
amazing.
It was an amazing training. It definitely opened me up more than I've ever been opened up before. And I say that from like, I'm not a vivid dreamer. Um, and I went through like 3 nights of what I felt like wasn't sleeping because I was having so many vivid dreams. I was like, and I finally was like, you guys have got to stop. Like this, I need to sleep because I'm a sleeper. Like sleep is
Mhm.
vital to me for my functioning in this human experience as a mom. And that was probably one of my hardest parts. Like when I had young ones, is like I'm not sleeping and I'm not a good human when I'm not sleeping. um, so finally I was like, you guys have got to stop. No, it's a phenomenal training. You get to watch Dolores and Julia, which is her daughter, who's kind of taken over since Dolores has passed away. You get to watch them speak. You get to hear about that. And then you're plugged into a beautiful community that's super supportive when you have questions.
Amazing. Okay, so honestly, I don't remember a whole lot about mine, but I'll share a bit about it. So, for one thing, it took me a long time to get in because there's not many of you guys. There's not many
Yeah.
practitioners, and so obviously you and I are both in Iowa, so there's only
Yeah.
a handful, right? So that was the
Yeah.
first thing. It took me literally, I think, over a year. And then guess what? Then I canceled. I had Tom and I going to do a session. Then I canceled because we had something come up. And then it was another year. Girl, I think we waited 2 years to get in. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I
so
think one of
again,
the
that,
practitioners right now is booked out to 2028. Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. So the thing I can remember about it is, so like you're talking about past life regression. And I know a lot of my past lives just from really from body work and from craniosacral and things. That's how I first became aware of, different past lives I've had because they just showed up. So this one was interesting because some of it was galactic. Some of it
Oh.
I was a being on other planets, actually starting planets. So that might be really weird for some of you listening out there, but literally, and I felt it. I was there. Like, yeah, I was on like brand new planets, starting the energy creating, and it was amazing. I mean, like, like you're saying with what you experience, I was there. That was who I was at that time. And I do believe in that there's all kinds of other places we go to. So that to me, really, that was the main one that I can recall right now, because it was over a year ago, and, so much happens. Right. And I'm
Yeah.
this kind of person, Cynthia, like I say I have a filing cabinet in my head, and a lot of it, I just throw the files out. And I'm also the type where, like, I'll go and I'll take a class, I'll write stuff and I'll never look at it again, because I'm like, it was for that moment. So that
Yes.
was profound. That was probably the most profound thing. And of course, there was definitely some healing on different levels, not to the same extent you have, but I also didn't go in saying, or needing to clear out any kind of migraines or anything, because I mean, overall in an okay place. I was just, curious about what is it, what is it about? Because I heard about it, and of course, I, knew some things about Dolores Cannon. So it was, yeah, but it was really profound. And especially being able to tap into the subconscious, like you were saying about moving
Yeah.
aside, this whole dimension and who I am and all my beliefs and concepts, and going straight to my soul source was just amazing. I mean, that to me was worth it so much. So it was an absolutely fabulous experience. And I'm so happy that you are here to share about it, because it's something that you don't hear too much about, honestly. Do you find that too?
No, yeah. So I literally signed up for my session because a friend was like, I had this whole like existential, what am I supposed to do? I know I'm supposed to help people. I don't know how I'm supposed to help people. And she's like, go to a QHHT session. So I signed up literally, and I showed up not knowing what I signed up for. And yeah, I mean, like that's kind of how it goes. Like, yeah,
Right. Kind of jumping right in, right, Cynthia?
right. And that's who I am. That's who I am. We could go over the
I
whole
feel
life
you.
story, but that's what I do.
Oh, I feel you. I'm the same exact way, especially when something like, when you get that nudge or that, yeah, that awareness, it's like, okay, well, this is the path. And so I'm super excited that you have shared that. Is there anything else you want to share about, QHHT?
Oh man, there's so much. I can just say that each journey is so different. And I think that's part of what I love so much is I show up not knowing what I'm going to get. I've had people come back as water. I've had people come back as seahorses on other planets. I've had somebody come back in Pearl Harbor during the attack and during World War II as a nurse. It's profound. The other thing is like I've had people that have been in active grieving for a long time, too long. Like grief serves a purpose, but when you're actively grieving and you're not moving through the phases, there's not, in my personal opinion, like there's no reason for us to be stuck unless if that's your soul contract. Like, but if your conscious level is not allowing you to move forward. And I had one person that was actively grieving for 4 years. And she came, and this person showed up in her subconscious and helped her process that grief. And she has been feeling fantastic ever since from a grief perspective. And I'm like, if you're not crying every day, that's a win. That's enough, right? Like it
Yeah.
doesn't, while that might not be profound to some, that is a profound to her life and her being able to move forward. So that's my biggest thing is you just have to be willing to be open to the possibility of the impossible. Like,
Ooh, I love that, Cynthia. Oh my gosh, say that one more time.
yeah,
That was so good.
and that one just came in. You like that? You have to be open to the possible of the impossible. I don't
I
know if that's how I said
love
it the first
it.
time.
I know it's something like that, but oh my gosh, that is so profound. And I guess that's one thing I want to share too about these sessions, is that it's really, like you're saying, it's unique to each person, but the container is so sacred. And I think that's the big thing too. Like when some people think about past life regression or hypnosis, they get a little like, but it's not like that at all. It's such a beautiful exploration. And, yeah, for myself and my husband, we both just loved it when we did it.
Yeah. And I also want to put in like, not everybody is amnesic. Like most people, because the veil has gotten thinner, like You are conscious through the process. So that's why not everybody, but like, that's why I remember so much, is because my veil is thin enough that like I could hear myself talking, and I was like, what is okay? Like, just trust the process, Cynthia. Just trust it. Like,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. I know a lot of people not a lot, but some people come to me with this fear of like letting go of control. And understanding like it's sacred and it's safe. And if there's something that you're not going to want to navigate, you're going to not navigate it because you're going to consciously block it. But B, like, I also honor that. So I had a client that came in that doesn't want to navigate what the traumas are. I'm like, we're not going to navigate it then. Like, that's not for me. It's not for me. So we didn't. And it is such a sacred space.
Absolutely. So Cynthia, you live in Iowa. Is this something that people can do online, or is it just in person?
Unfortunately, it's in person. I say unfortunately just because it means that you have to travel to me, or you have to ask me to travel to you. However, it is in person just from a safety perspective. So if you do get in a trance, there are people who get up and walk away while they're still in a trance. They might go to the restroom, or we might lose internet, and I can't navigate that while you're in a trance, and so that's not safe. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no,
in
right.
person.
I totally get that. Okay, so that's a good thing to know. So this is just good information for because this podcast goes out
Yeah,
worldwide, so there's a lot of listeners all over
yeah,
the place. So it's great
yeah.
information, and then it's great to know that anyone in the Midwest or in America that really resonates with Cynthia, can find out. And I'll have all the information in the show links, show notes, the links and everything, how to get a hold of you. And I want to, say something about that too. So I did a session with a hypnosis session with a lady that helped me out. I guess it was middle of last year. I had a lot of issues at nighttime when Tom was gone, with being like waking up or being like anxious or scared something was going to happen. And so I worked with her, but when I had the hypnosis, I was so deep. I mean, like, I think it was a 3 or 4 hour, just like the QHHT. It's a couple hours, right? So I was
Yeah.
under a couple hours, and then to get out of it. And I really didn't even think about the fact that, like, what if something happens? Thank goodness I didn't think about that then, because literally she was like, Teresa, to get me back, because I was so deep. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
So during COVID, some practitioners were like, oh, I can do this. And they tried. And Dolores was very much adamant that it had to be done in person before she passed away. But during COVID, I mean, COVID changed everything, right? We had to do things virtual. And somebody tried and they did lose connection. And they were like, yeah, no, don't ever do that. And they made sure like that all practitioners are like, I thought I was fine. I'm invincible. But this happened to me and it's not, yeah, it's not a safe place.
right. Well, I get it. And like I said,
Yeah.
because I experienced it, I was like, because what if I
Yeah.
didn't wake up? I mean, I did, but clearly, she was like, Teresa,
Yeah.
trying to get me back because I was gone.
Yeah.
So, oh, Cynthia,
Yeah.
this has been so much fun. I thank you so much for coming on today and, sharing your story, sharing about QHHT and the profound impacts it clearly has made on your life. And I'm sure your family's life too, right?
Yes. It's been pivotal in our household.
Because it just ripples. I mean, anything we do healing
Yeah.
wise and especially our own inner work just ripples out to those around us, whether or not they participate, or like your daughters are young,
Hmm.
whether or not they go there. It's like everyone is affected. So I really thank you so much, Cynthia, for sharing that today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So again, if you want to get in touch with Cynthia, you can check out the show notes and you can look her up she's on Instagram, she's on TikTok, so a lot of the fun social media places, and you can see what she's up to and what she's doing, and book a session with her because it's profound, and especially if you're in the Midwest or in the US, or you know what, say you're in England, in a really great, cool place in England, and you want to have her come to you and pay for it. Hey, you're all over that, right, Cynthia?
Right. I'm for it. And even if you have like a few people that are interested, I mean, it is an all, like, one session is pretty much all day, so it's one person per day, but I'm all for a working trip, right?
Heck yeah, or Greece or something. I'm thinking something good. Spain,
Yeah.
Greece.
Yeah. Right?
Awesome. So again,
Yes.
all that'll be in the show notes for you listeners out there. And I just want to thank each and every one of you around the world for listening in. It means so much to me and so much to my beautiful guests that come on, that we're able to share these insights, the wisdom, and all these beautiful modalities that are out there in the world with you, the listeners. So until next week, remember that life is too short to not be enthusiastic about your unique journey. To keep the enthusiasm going, please like, subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you.